Bienvenue à tout le monde to PAFSO's Tradecraft Week. Today's session is going to be focusing on working with regional offices. My name is Marty and I'm at the PAFSO office. A reminder that the session is going to be recorded so it can be posted onto PAFSO's YouTube channel at a later date, likely at the end of the week. PAFSO would like to acknowledge that we are hosting this Tradecraft Week on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. PAFSO acknowledges them as the past, present, and future caretakers of the land. Since we have a small group, if you have any questions, raise your hand, and we will then take your question after or in between discussion. I will then unmute your microphone so that you have permission to talk, and we can keep the roundtable going. And with that, I'll pass it over to Tam.
Good morning, everyone. For those who know me or don't know me, I'm Tam or Tammy Ames. I'm the Senior Trade Commissioner in Costa Rica. We also cover Nicaragua and Honduras. I have not worked in a regional office. I have obviously worked with regional offices in my various iterations of my career. And something when we started talking about the tradecraft and what we wanted to talk about and what topics we wanted to cover, regional offices came up. And I think a lot of us feel like, I mean, we know what a regional office does. Even if you've never worked in one, you know what their sort of raison d'etre is for existing. But how do we leverage each other? What do posts need to do to help regional offices do their job better? And how can regional offices help posts serve our clients better? So I think today is an opportunity for those people who worked at a post and in a regional office to talk about what they've seen that has been amazing, that worked really well, what they wish people would do on both sides of the side of the screen, and come up with some ideas and best practices and that kind of thing. It's going to be pretty free flowing. I'm going to let each of our panelists have the opportunity to talk a bit about what they've done, their career path, and where they are kind of now, and their ideas, what they've liked and what has made them crazy as a trade commissioner, either in a regional office or at post, both. So I'm going to start with Nadja. She is in Bern right now, so we'll let you go first since it's latest in the day for you. I appreciate you for joining us in the late afternoon, I guess it is, evening. So please go ahead and tell us a bit about yourself, what you've done, and how you've found life with regional offices.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tammy, and thanks for having me on the panel. As Tammy mentioned, my name is Nadja Schauer. I'm in Switzerland at the Embassy of Canada to Switzerland and Liechtenstein, not to be forgotten, although it usually is for Liechtenstein. I have been here since last August, so I'm coming up on my 1.5-year mark. It's been busy for sure, the transition. Just before arriving here in Switzerland, I was at Root, our regional office to Ontario, located in Toronto for 7 years. I was there from 2014 to 2021. I did have 2 maternity leaves in there, so not quite 7-year work experience, but extensive enough, covering a few different positions while I was there. Before then, I was at our mission to the EU in Brussels for 3 years. That was my first and only ever posting, and I did some trade policy work before that at HQ. So I haven't actually been in Ottawa for a very long time. And my 2 most recent experiences being at Post now and at the RO before then. And maybe I will talk, when I was just thinking about what to share with the group, and I see there are some that have current RO experience, so it'll be interesting to get comments from everyone after as well. First, when I was at the RO, what were some of the challenges, not having worked abroad as a trade commissioner, because my posting in Brussels was a multilateral one. What I found, the first one was communication, and I don't know if others, it'll be interesting to hear what others are finding as well, but I would sometimes, at the RO, your bread and butter is meeting TCS clients, right? Companies that are either already working with the TCS or looking into doing so in the future. And this happened on more than one occasion where I would meet with the companies and they would say, oh, I just met with colleague X from post Y a few weeks ago here in the city, which is awkward when you don't know what's happening in your own city, within your own organization. So communication and, story of government's life, I guess we face that in many different aspects, but that's definitely a big one that I found challenging at the RO. I found lack of follow-ups on our infamous CCTMs, client connection to missions, which, I mean, in the beginning, I'm like, oh, what's a CCTM? I've never heard of that before. But I think now it's been so many years that we're all much more familiar with those. And I think one of the reasons why that was, so coming from Runt, which is our largest regional office, and since I've left has almost, Janice can tell us, but maybe even doubled in size since then, almost. But so we cover almost every single sector is a priority sector for us. So you will have a person on covering almost every sector exclusively, and sometimes each trade commissioner at the office, the regional office, will cover, even the tiniest sector. So then when you go to post with your CCTM, to you it's really important as someone working in the regional office, but to the person as post, who, I don't know, my trade team here, there's 5 of us in total, including myself and our admin. That's not a lot of people. So we, there's this misalignment in priority sectors, and what's important for the RO is not always a priority, let's say, at post. And I'll leave it here because I think others will have more things to add, and I don't want to, steal everyone's thunder by going through all the points. But then, so the flip side, then moving to post, what were some of the things? So first of all, one observation, I spent 7 years at the regional office. It's really easy to fall into bad habits of, I don't want to say forgetting that they're there, but you're in your bubble, in your post bubble, and everything else is out here, including regional offices, just being honest. So it's this continual, you almost like, have to remind yourself continually, they're really busy, especially having worked there. So, not just myself, but more the officers on my team, they sometimes don't want to bother them. They have, this may be perceived, not that ROs are understaffed, but this perceived, lack of time for their specific issue. And sometimes I'm still finding with my team that, when I encourage them to work more with the regional office, I get this, I already know all the companies that I want to reach out to. And I try to explain, well, regional offices could have more reach, could extend, your reach into all Canadian provinces and territories. It's like, oh, no, don't worry. I know who to contact. So that's, that's not my own personal challenge. It's more on the team, but how do we get around that? That leads me to best practices. When I find time, this is what I want to spend more time doing. It's to engage more proactively with the regional offices. And I almost wish there was and maybe this would be up for the beat branch to do, but a more organized way to communicate, because then for ROs, there's 6 of them. If every STC around the world decides they want to have monthly calls with each RO, that's only 6 calls for me, but that's hundreds of calls for the ROs, right? So I almost wish there was something a bit more streamlined, whether that was sectoral or, region by region, that kind of took us through each RO's. I don't want to hear about your whole strategy, but maybe if there's a few key initiatives during the year, or if there's a specific cluster of industry or whatnot in a province, that might be of interest to hear. And then post could just tune in depending on whether that matches with their own interests as well. Something like that would be super interesting, I think, and would be a great way for all of us to benefit more from the other instead of working in our silos. And I know we've made a lot of improvements, I think, over the years in terms of working together, but I think we can work together even more. And for Switzerland, I mean, our post is quite small, right? So we don't actually get that many CCTMs, so send more to us, please. But to get ourselves a bit more on the map as well with our roles in case there's something interesting that we should be knowing about as well. And I think I'll end here. Oh, we can't hear you.
Thanks so much. I think there was some good points there that I'll comment afterwards. We can come back to that. And continuing to move toward the West Coast, Jan from Ontario, but you're in Waterloo?
I am. Hi, everyone. I think I know most people on the call, but for those I haven't met, my name is Jan Vogel, and I'm Trade Commissioner and head of our satellite office in Waterloo region, and responsible for flying the TCS flag in the territory of southwestern Ontario. So Waterloo really down to Windsor and up to Collingwood. So in that regard, it's a multi-sector role, but I have great support from our team in Toronto, who are sector experts in certain areas, as you know. I'm not going to repeat what Nadja said. I do think that it really does come down to the theme of communication. But what I will compliment to what Nadja said is based on a few postings. I was Deputy Director in Ontario Region for several years and a Trade Commissioner. After that, I went to our post in Hong Kong as Deputy Program Manager there for 4 years, and then spent 5 years at our post in London as one of the Program Managers for Trade on that team. So I was abroad for about 9 years and got back about a year ago. And earlier in my career, I was a political officer and served both at headquarters and at post in the political stream. So with that vantage point, I guess what I wanted to share is what I wish I had, what I would like Post to know, and what I wished when I was at Post ROs considered. And as I think one of the key things when I was at Post was that I wasn't sure that the ROs appreciated the number of demands that were not directly related to client service, the demands on our time, and how thin we were stretched. And that could be accompanying the head of mission to outreach, and the commercial elements of that, not just high-level visits. It could be that the head of mission had accepted an invitation to a dinner, and a few hours before we got the guest list, and the guest list had a lot of high-level private sector folks. So, you drop everything, you do your research, you brief up, and make recommendations for strategic engagement. I'm not going to go on and on. You all know some of the other demands, but the point is that the client service of of client connections from ROs was just a small sliver of the work we were doing. And I would say that many companies come direct to Post, and the ones that do are often the larger, more sophisticated ones. They're reaching out directly to the head of mission, or they're reaching out directly to trade commissioners. They're the ones that are the frequent flyers. They know how we work. They might have government relations folks or IBD leads on their team, and they're well-resourced. Yes, we get some SMEs reaching out, but I would say for the most part, the ones that there's a higher mix, I would say, of larger and more sophisticated, medium and larger size Canadian companies and those anchor clients. And the key message is at Post, you don't want to burn your contacts. Right? If you go to one contact too much, or you make an introduction that's not of high quality, it hurts every company that comes after and your ability to serve that client afterward. On the flip side, in the ROs, I don't think there was appreciation when I was at Post for the volume of early stage exporters and the volume of small clients that were coming to us for help. There's a lot of outreach by ministers, by partners. OGD partners are flowing new companies to the ROs all the time. And I would say I could probably onboard a new client every day of the week, which is a lot of work when you think that you're hand-holding them to become market ready, or they think they're export ready, and you have to manage those expectations. So in that regard, I don't think at Post I had any appreciation for the volume that the CAN export programs generated, the volume of interest. Some of those companies are applying for CAN export without ever having spoken to a trade commissioner in an RO or at Post. And by the time we talk to them, they may have been rejected, they might be angry, they might be, just not necessarily coming to the discussion with a positive frame of mind, and we're spending a lot of time managing expectations. So, so then I would say, and I'll wrap it up in a second because I don't want to take too much airtime. There are a lot of great ideas. The point that at Post you get to focus on a market or a few markets, and in the ROs we're trying to focus on the world. There are 160 posts that might be coming to us with leads and outreach requests and that sort of thing. But we do have fewer activities and events that are off, that are not related to client service. So we get to focus on clients, whereas at Post, you're dealing with a broader range, I think, of activities. But instead of focusing on a market, we have to keep our eyes open to the world, and that's a little bit tricky. So I'll leave it at that, but I guess to close, I would say that I recognize that the risk at Post is burning contacts, but the risk of the ROs is not delivering and just burning the reputation of the TCS for all of us. So we do send CCTMs with a bit of hesitation, wondering if we'll hear back and wondering if they'll be actioned, which is a bit disappointing. And conversely, I know all of you are working really hard on leads and wondering if we're getting, the right clients and giving you the right support. So I think it does come down to communication. Please don't hesitate to reach out to all of us, perhaps individually or small groups, those that you know that are working in your particular sectors of responsibility. Last point, I heard BFM say to a group, I can't remember which group it was, something that stuck with me. And it was that at a time when trust in government institutions and government in general is probably at its lowest, every interaction we have with a company is an opportunity to rebuild that trust. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us to manage expectations, both at Post and at ROs, and make sure that we are, under promising and over delivering, one company at a time. So I'll leave it there and look forward to others and their perspectives. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Jan. Moving further west to my old stomping grounds, go Manitoba, go Bisons. We have Deborah in Winnipeg. You go ahead, Deborah, and tell us a bit about yourself and your challenges.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Deborah Boyce. I'm a trade commissioner in the regional office in Winnipeg. We are the newest regional office in the network. So Manitoba, Saskatchewan was carved out of Calgary in 2019. At the time, Jim Carr, who was an MP for Winnipeg, was our Minister of International Trade and Diversification at that point, his title was, and he wanted a regional office again here. So gradually over the last 3 years, we have been rebuilding the team. We are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are now 7 trade commissioners in Manitoba, Saskatchewan. We have a brand new office, as you can see, the beautiful turquoise wall behind me here in Winnipeg. So, I think, honestly, I made notes, and I think Nadja and Janice have covered it really well. When I first arrived here in 2018, this is my first time here in a regional office. So I joined in 2018. Prior to that, I had been, I guess I would say lucky, fortunate, but I don't know if the department would agree with me, but since joining the department in 2004, I've been posted as a trade commissioner in India, in Indonesia. I did a year and a bit in Cael, but that was on the public affairs side. And before coming here, I was STC in Trinidad and Tobago. So odd for me to join the Foreign Service and wind up 18 years later, 200 kilometers away from where I grew up. But when I first came, it was very interesting because I don't know if antagonism was the right word, but I suddenly found myself defending the posts to my RO colleagues, and to a certain extent having to defend the ROs to Post colleagues. So it was a very interesting fence that I felt I was sitting on. I'm not going to beat the CCTM horse. I think we've probably beaten that enough to death. And the communication. So I would agree with what Nadja and Janice had said. The communication is key. The understanding that both sides are under pressure is key. Not responding is not great. And that's whether the RO sends a CCTM or a query to the post and gets no answer with regards to a client, or vice versa, when the post sends an email to the RO and gets no answer. And I've been on both ends, and it's not pleasant. So, I mean, I think we all have work to do in terms of, no matter how busy we are, ensuring that communication flows, and remembering that we are all connected. There were many times at Post that I reached out to the RO wanting to try to connect with a certain company that I thought might be a good fit for an opportunity. And they were very defensive and this is my client. It's like, well, it's not your client, it's our client. So I think remembering that we're all trying to serve these same companies, how we build those communications, depending on the size of the post, of the size of the RO. TCs may not want to be copied on every interaction with every client. And, I think as maybe Janice said, there are the frequent flyers that go directly to the post, but especially when it's a frequent flyer, but there's a problem, loop in the RO, because if the company is not getting the answer it wants at Post, it's going to circle back to the RO and answer shop. And it's really helpful for everybody to be on the same page. So while you don't want to fill up everyone's inbox, ensuring that, you're copying the right people on those key messages. So as Nadja said, I know when a post is reaching out to one of our key stakeholders here, so that I know what's happening. Or I'm engaged with a company and there's an issue, and make sure that the post is aware. So yeah, I mean, it goes back to communication, and I think we all have kind of our individual roles to play to improve it and to strengthen it. I guess maybe of a transactional side, I would say, especially when it comes to recruitment, it's important for the post, and I think did not grasp this when I was at Post. The ROs are inundated on a daily basis with recruitment messages. This mission, that webinar. And especially for a smaller post like Manitoba, Saskatchewan, we cannot be sending these to our counterparts or our stakeholders, our companies on a daily basis, because they will just mark us to spam eventually. So what a lot of us have done, and we've had these conversations, especially on the ICT and life science side, where there's a lot of activity. We send out a notification once every 2 or 3 weeks to our clients and our partners. And we take all of the messages that we've received from all the different posts, cobble it together into one kind of little newsletter and send it out. So if posts send us an email that say, oh, the deadline to respond is in 2 days, guess what? I'm not sending it to clients and I'm not sending it to partners. So you need to be able to give us sufficient lead time to be able to triage that, to make sure it's going to the right companies, or to put it into our more general notifications to clients. But yeah, I mean, I guess that would be it, and it would be communication. Communication is really key. So, and thanks, Tammy, for the opportunity. And you're on mute.
My mouse, I lost control of my mouse there. I didn't want to go from the right place. Thanks. There's some good points there too. Sometimes an emergency on my part is not an emergency on everyone else's part. We have to remember that. I will move now to the coast, to the west coast, to Cael, and you can talk.
Morning, everyone, and anyone who might be watching in the future, considering an RO posting at some point. It's nice to see you all, colleagues, and I was thinking about it, and I guess I probably am the furthest west posted Global Affairs Canada employee, if you consider the international date line here in Victoria. So I guess it's the earliest for me than anyone else here, but I'm delighted to join. A lot of the points have been raised, but a few just bits of color commentary. So I started, like Jan, as an FPDS officer and ended up going to Tokyo, which had a TCS component through international education. And at the time, the idea of working with an RO seemed completely unnecessary. They didn't know anything. They knew nothing about my market. There was nobody there who could tell me whether or not a school might be interested in doing a partnership in Japan. Until about 3 or 4 years in, where I read finally a very good client assessment and realized, oh my God, these folks know what they're talking about. What was I doing wrong all this time? I then did an assignment for 4 years in Vancouver, first 2 years as a trade commissioner responsible for life sciences, and then as a deputy director. And then was at the High Commission in London running the Canadian Trade Accelerator Program. A brief stop back as a headquarters deputy director working remotely for the High Intensity Services Division. And now I am out in Victoria in a similar role to Jan's, covering Vancouver Island and also looking after ocean technologies for the province. So I think that one of the big appeals for me coming from another stream into the TCS was the simplicity of mandate and the defined outcomes. You can go, particularly from a public affairs role, it can be difficult to quantify the impact that you're having and find deliverables and so on. And having KPIs and metrics and Trio, while it may be occasionally a pain administratively, it's really nice to be able to say, I did this, and here's a clear outcome. And I would say going from a trade commissioner or somebody working at headquarters to an RO is that. Again, you're taking a similar thing. We have an even more simple mandate, and that is we support our clients and we support visits, and that's it. And it's lovely. So that's my pitch to anybody who might want to try an RO position here. It's been, I guess, nearly 9 years since I've had to work for Ottawa. It's great. British Columbia has its charms. And I think that it's been interesting to see over the last few years that there does seem to be a shift in the balance of power between headquarters and the regional offices. I think particularly in terms of staffing positions, whereas right now in headquarters and a lot of the geos and some of the sector groups, it can be a challenge to staff all of the vacant positions, where in the regional offices, we frequently have the opposite experience where we have a lot of people who come get a taste for it and don't want to leave. So there are quite a few lapsed FS who decide that for whatever reason, whether it's the work, whether it's the environment, whether it's proximity to family, will decide that they want to stay and work in that RO. And consequently, you're seeing the ROs being able to take on a number of initiatives that, by virtue of having talented people and a relatively straightforward baseline mandate, that once they hit their targets for the year, they can then do other things that would be of personal interest to them, whether it's a specific initiative or something cross-stream. I think of a paper that Root did a while ago that focused on trade and development. So the ROs are more resourced than you would think, but not in sort of like a vacant extra capacity way, just sort of as an interesting driver of cool stuff. I think that the role of the FS in a regional office is important for reasons that others on the panel have already discussed, but there is kind of a translation function for the non-rotational members of the RO to explain what it's like when you're at post. And it's been touched upon, but the motivations of an LES, the motivations of a mission in terms of how busy you are, not burning your contacts, what an opportunity is and why it matters and why it's important for you to refer. There needs to be that translational role, because unless you've lived it and unless you've been in that system and managed those teams and so on, it's difficult for your colleagues to pick up, especially for folks who have only worked in a regional office and may have only done there for a little while. That's on you. And similarly, when you're abroad, bringing that forward to to your colleagues at mission and waving that flag and saying, yes, well, actually, we have these really good networks and they know these people, and more to the point, you can direct them. So if you're looking for specific clients in a sector and would like people to go and dig or follow up, usually a polite word from a post saying, we would like you in the future to prioritize this when you're doing your out calls. Great, we exist, we're happy to help. I think that there is obviously, I speak for sort of ROPAC and ROANT, the two westernmost, if I can speak on behalf of ROANT, the two westernmost ROs in terms of size. You'll see that Ontario and Quebec tend to be bigger. They have, I would say, more clients than they can easily intake. Whereas to generalize, the prairies in Atlantic Canada are able to know their clients really well. BC and Alberta tend to be in the middle. It's manageable and you can grasp them. We may not know everybody, but have a reasonable, could presumably if we were in there long enough. The message here has really been share till it hurts. You know, we'll work with our provincial partners, we'll work with the other ROs, we'll work to the extent possible, and there are tangible benefits to communication that have really helped out. It wouldn't be, and I'll wrap up after this, but I feel obligated to throw a few wish list things in. I don't know that I'd put them as complaints, but what would be nice to see, and this is less directed towards folks at Post than it is, I think, at headquarters who might be listening. But with the shift towards trade diversification and support for underrepresented groups and the law, those sorts of movements, a lot of those clients are in sectors that are not mission priority sectors. So if you're going to be supporting Indigenous business, for example, you're going to see a lot of consumer products, you're going to see a lot of professional services, similar to women-owned and youth-owned businesses. And we as a TCS aren't really set up to have, you know, a raft of dedicated consumer products trade commissioners across the United States who are proactively soliciting opportunities with hardware retailers or whatever. So I think that those tens of inquiries tend to get shunted off to a trade commissioner assistant or dealt responsively. But the marching orders that we're getting and the role of the TCS as we expand the number of clients that we're serving is going to require that we support these companies that are going to be SMEs, that are not going to be the frequent flyers, but that under the terms of our mandate are folks that we need to serve. So it's kind of conceptually interesting to say, okay, well, what's the opportunity cost of initiative X when if the alternative would be, you know, a new consumer products trade commissioner in New York or Los Angeles or Atlanta or something along those lines. I feel as well too that we could probably collectively do a better job with some of the venture capital or equity fundraising for innovative clients. I don't feel that we necessarily have a good pipeline from the ROs, potentially through our embedded officers working on this out to mission. And we're finding that, you know, in certain ecosystems, money makes the world go round. This is what clients need. I think life sciences in particular, where, you know, maybe 10 years before you're actually exporting anything, if you ever get there. But I don't feel that there's necessarily a good line of communication or a pipeline that allows us to take a client, polish up their pitch deck, and then put them in front of relevant contacts out at Post. And of course, the usual plea, I think the most exciting part of the work at an RO, in my view, is the ability to do some of the problem solving and matchmaking when we get a really cool opportunity and say, all right, this lead, I know 3 or 4 clients who might be able to fulfill that. And, you know, you go out to them and say, hey, you know, our trade commissioner in Bern has just pulled forward this fantastic opportunity for you. Based on our relationship, it sounds like a good fit. What do you think? And for the business, this is manna from heaven, right? The government is coming for you with a qualified sales lead. I'm glad I pay my taxes, sort of thing, right? But that only works if we get it in a timely fashion. All of the regional offices benefit from a biweekly trio pull that folks in Ontario do, that pulls all of the opportunities, triages them, sends them our way. But often by the time they reach us, they're stale. There's no good learning about a tender 2 weeks after it closes. So I would say to anyone at Post who may be listening, once you get those opportunities, even if the actual trio entry takes you a while, send it out to your sector leads in the ROs. We really look forward to receiving those. And the more details you can provide, the better. That makes it actionable, but that's where we want to help. So we're at your service, and look forward to working with you all. I'll end it there.
Thanks, Cael. Some good ideas. I'm going to raise a few things that came up. I'll just sort of using my own personal relationship. You mentioned the underrepresented groups and that's a priority for GAC. It's also something, you know, they push out to posts, and there's 120 of us who decide to do activities with Indigenous business. And we kind of looked into that as an option for us after I did working with Indigenous or promoting Indigenous businesses last year was our Tradecraft webinar. And yes, we're helping them or we're promoting them. There's not very many that are ready to go out, and they're usually very small. And if there's 110 posts who are knocking at your door wanting lists and recruiting, you know, Indigenous business, I know you don't have, you know, we don't have a critical mass that we can have. Even we did a Women in Clean Tech webinar. Thankfully it was virtual, but we had quite a challenge finding 7 or 8 companies that are in the right subsectors that could do work in Central America, that are women owned or women managed. You know, when you start putting on all of the checkmark boxes, you get a very, very narrow a limit and your number of companies who are eligible. And I'm not sure if, I sort of feel there's this push from headquarters to do this. We have ITSF funding, we have all this, you should be putting this in, it's a priority. But then when we try to do it, we're like, we're not ready, they're not ready. I'm not sure what the solution is, or if anyone has any ideas. Do we just, you know, is it live and learn? Do we tell headquarters to stop telling everybody to do Indigenous missions because we can't cope? I don't know what the answer is. Anybody have a comment either on either a guest or others? Or I can just throw out, Cael talked about the value of FS and ROs, but I'll be honest, when I started looking for you guys to participate, I started looking at people in the ROs, and it was damn hard to find FS who are in ROs anymore. The positions are being converted to COs. You see FS or regional office jobs coming up on round 3 and round 4 of the posting list. So obviously we're not jumping at the opportunity. You know, what do you think about the fact that there's fewer and fewer FS? Is that going to, you know, Cael said why it's good to have FS. Is it going to be problematic if it's everybody's a CO who's never been abroad and doesn't know what it's like to work in a mission?
Can I make the pitch for those that are maybe then either going to watch this as a video or on now? I never thought I would consider an RO assignment ever. And honestly, this has been one of the best jobs I've had in my career with the department. It's like being on posting, but you can drink the tap water. I mean, it's been amazing. You know, and maybe part of it is because, you know, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, it's a bit more of a smaller, you know, I think it was Cael that said you get to know everybody. But, you know, working with all sizes of companies in all stages of development, looking at their export plans. And again, it's not, okay, I'm in Trinidad, how do I get this company paid? How do I sort out this particular issue for this company? It's helping them figure out their entire global strategy and where they're focusing. I mean, it's a really amazing and very gratifying work. And there are obviously downsides. You know, you don't have the financial benefit that you would have necessarily when you go to post, and there, you know, you have to find your own housing and etc. But I would strongly recommend people to consider it. It is really it's a great opportunity to learn more about the ecosystems in Canada, about the clients, and I feel like the next time I go out, I'm going to be a much better trade commissioner because of my experience here.
If I could just build on that.
Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, sorry, Cael. I was just going to say I agree 100% with what Deb said. I really do think it's the best kept secret in the department. When you think about the idea of going from client-facing ops at Post to client-facing ops in Canada, only as Deb described, very articulately, it's at every stage of development, and you're bringing a strategic lens. So it really, you got to keep your tools sharp. Because you're sitting on the ground domestically where frankly most of these companies don't care if you're with the feds, the province, the municipality, or with anybody else. You've got a short window to demonstrate value, and if you don't, they'll move on. But when you do demonstrate that value in the way that Cael described, our mandate is clear. And we can measure it in fortunately in dollar cents and partnerships at the end of the year. It is a clear mandate, and when it works, the companies are extremely grateful. It's very gratifying to have those results in terms of months, as opposed to those of us who've worked on the political side. You might be working a file for, you might hear 12 years later from your successors saying, hey, this got accomplished. So for those of us that might be a little more impatient in our approach, it's great work. Not to mention the benefit of living in Canada. So that's my pitch. Sorry, Cael, go ahead.
No, I mean, those excellent points. I mean, I'll stick up for the, oh yeah, there are positions in round 3 and round 4, but usually because RO people get hired and go off to fantastic spots, and their positions open up at that point because of the double round, not because we're unpopular, certainly not. It's true. It's interesting to see that there has been a trend towards a reduction in the number of FS in the regional offices. I mean, there was a bloodbath around DRAP when all of the CO's positions were chopped, and a lot of the FS ones were kept in the balance, ended up going much higher FS. But you are seeing that there's a shift, and you can understand from a perspective of management how it is kind of nice to be able to have an easily locally staffable position. Locally staffed, not in the LES sense, but you don't have to go through HFP, and often you will also find that certainly out west, language requirements are much simpler for a unilingual office rather than trying to find somebody who's got CCC bilingual in an area where we have very few clients who choose to engage with us in French. But regardless, I think that we'll also continue to see a shift of former FS. I think demographically speaking, you're going to see folks who want to be close to their parents, particularly if they need to be back in its opportunity, and then once they get a taste for it, may try to just stay on. I don't know that it's easy. I mean, look, it's easy for me to sit in Victoria and say, it's wonderful, everyone would want to come here, it's great, it never snows, etc. But I think it's fair to say that if comparable work were available in headquarters, or if the opportunity were to, I would rather do an assignment in Halifax or Toronto or Calgary doing this kind of work, or Ottawa doing this kind of work, than work in sectors branch or work in trade policy or work in a geo. Like just the actual satisfaction of having that direct interaction and tangible outcomes has been fantastic. And then I guess Tam, in terms of 115 posts fishing from the same small pond, it's a challenge, and I think it does go back to what was said earlier by Deb about that's it in a microcosm, or whether it's ag tech companies from CTAs or whatever. We do have Canada is still a small country in the big scheme of things, right? And if you're looking at slicing and dicing into smaller subsectors, it does make recruitment a challenge. And in some cases, it's the lens of the RO officer is not always going to be, okay, what's best for mission X, or what's best for this initiative. Our motivation is what's best for the client. And it may well be that this cool initiative down to Costa Rica, if they only have 1 or 2 biz dev people who also are production and marketing and sales and finance and so on, maybe the lower hanging fruit, down to your immediate cross-border post south, is going to be what makes sense for that company or what the company wants to do. So I have enormous sympathy for that. I realize that we want to try to do initiatives and try to support, and for legitimate reasons. But it may be a case that rather than collectively, rather than sort of focusing on specific initiatives to give a taste of the market, something that's more of a sustained infrastructural, like, okay, and so we have a regional position that covers Central and South America. Good luck, but like that was a coordinating role that is there to support, right? I don't have an easy answer for that, other than to say that where it stands right now, if our goal is to grow the number of clients that we're serving, and that is in the longer term strategy, then a lot of the growth is going to be coming from sectors that are not going to be like aerospace or cyber or whatever. They'll be there, but the vast majority are going to be consumer products, professional services, and some ag and processed foods, that sort of thing.
Okay, thanks. I have two questions, Pam and then Karen Sleeman. Pam?
Oh, sorry, Tam, maybe let Karen go first. I think mine is sort of more general, probably.
Okay, Karen, you're first. Marty will unmute you. There you go.
Great. Hi, guys. I think I definitely know everyone on the screen with the exception of Nadja, but Karen Sleeman here in San Diego. I have extensive experience working with the ROs going back to the days when I was doing trade missions with Mint and so forth, but I've kind of taken down a few notes. I have a few things sort of to cover. In terms of recruitment, that is something that I agree with Deborah, that you guys are supporting a multitude of offices and can't be bothering people. I think as well is that officers that post, and I've been trying to encourage this, and I think for me, I have the advantage of always been working at the headquarters, is there's not enough people using the TCS events page in terms of people at post, and I think with companies that receive those that actually refer to them or receive the information, that I think will be a bit of a relief for ROs in that sense. The other thing too, with a lot of the high intensity service programs that are taking place at missions, I think more too that I'm seeing more officers going to ROs just to identify specific clients. So not necessarily doing a wide range of recruitment, but coming to ROs to say, we're looking for these type of companies. Can you identify and relying on the ROs? So that kind of eliminates the wide distribution. And I like Deborah in terms of, I don't know if this is consistent across all the regional offices, but if all the regional offices do send general notification with, and that's a question that maybe once I finish this, if you can ask, do all the ROs do these, every 2 weeks or once or whatever, general notification of things coming up for recruitment? Because that would be great if it's consistent across the board. The one thing that I have been noticing from my officers is I keep getting the comments of, I'm finding companies that the ROs don't even know about. And, it's almost like they put it in as a bad thing. Well, ROs are not supposed to know. I mean, they can't know every single company that exists out there. So I get a lot of companies that come to me directly right away. I'm in Trio and I automatically send it back to the RO and to say, great, I help you, but first go. And again, I'm trying to push my officers to do that. Great, if you find them, did you reach out to the RO? Did you tell them about it? So there's a lot of constant reminding that personally I've been having to do. And then one last thing in terms of the Indigenous, I am actually right now organizing an Indigenous business mission to Arizona. And I made this one, those that are export ready, which as we all know are few and far between in terms of in Canada. But again, it's consumer products, it's ag. But I think the one thing that has been refraining people from participating, yes, the lack of those that are export ready, but 2 is the lack of funding as well. So in any case, I think, again, we are being pushed. We have Black tech, we have women tech, we have Indigenous owned. So yes, we're being pushed and we're being told every single business planning, we have to incorporate it. But I think aside to that, it's those in Canada, I'm not referring to ROs, there has to be more programs in terms of getting those people export ready so that they can be more evident. And that is it. And all I can say is I've only had but great experience working with ROs. So keep up the good work. And yes, I almost worked in the office in Vancouver. So who knows? Because as we all know, I'm not an FS. So you never know. Anyways, that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. Pam, now's your turn.
Thanks. So I wanted to make sort of a few comments, but first of all, I'm really happy to see so many people coming to participate in this. I think this is great. And from the selfish PAFSO perspective, I just want to give you a heads up that now we know where you live and where you all are. And I don't know if you were at the AGM yesterday where we talked about what's coming up for the next year when we're going to be trying to do more outreach and advocacy to raise our profile, the profile of the FS group with decision makers and the public. And I'm really hoping that we can recruit some of you guys in there to help get some of our messaging out. And the other thing I don't know if you heard is that William Dunlop, who is one of the members of our executive committee, is going to be holding a session tomorrow at 7 a.m. Eastern Ottawa time in order to give people from missions and so on, different missions, a chance to come live, talking about our Indigenous mentorship program. The working title is Your Foreign Service Friend, and the idea is to give students, Indigenous students in Canada who are interested. Oh, sorry, Marty's saying it's on Thursday. Why am I thinking it's tomorrow? I don't know. Thursday, but still at 7, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, I guess, depending on your time zone. So I mean, we would really welcome your interest and participation in this, especially, given that you're outside Ottawa, because we're going to be, William has already done some work to make initial connections with Indigenous student groups at different universities and so on. And, but if we could have those connections in regions outside Ottawa, I think it would be really helpful to helping us develop that. And then, since I don't want to just be chasing everyone with the handout, I wanted to ask, what can PAFSO do better for you? For those of you who are posted in the regional office, how do you feel about the level of connection with PAFSO? Naomi Gilker, who is, I think she's on the line or was, is just joining XCOM for the new cycle as of today as an official XCOM member. And she is in the regional office in Montreal. Welcome, Naomi. And we had Cael on the XCOM before, who brought some of the regional office perspective from Vancouver. So I'm hoping that we will be able to, have a better sense of what your needs are and what, the ways that the particular issues that you might want to bring to PAFSO. But I would welcome hearing from you if there's anything that you've noticed or anything that you would like us to do. So thanks.
Nadja, and then Cael.
All right. I don't know how to lower the hand here.
There you go. You're good.
Good. I think those were some interesting comments. I'll try to tune in on Thursday at 1 p.m. Swiss time, which is just after lunch. I just quickly wanted to circle back at just speaking for the Ontario Regional Office. I don't, at least during the time that I was there, I don't think they cut or traded any FS positions. I think it's just that a lot of the new positions that are coming in were CO 1 and 2s. We did a 1 or 2, if not 3, I can't remember now, competitions at the time, and all of the new boxes were CO boxes. So maybe that had something to do with it. I think some, especially maybe Toronto, Ontario, and out west, could be less popular because of the lack of FSDs, you know, it not being a true posting and the cost of living and whatnot. And since Pam is on the line, I will just quickly say that going on posting from a regional office is a bit of a pain, because there's many, okay, I don't want to say many, but there's quite a few things that don't apply because we're not in the national capital region, and FSDs that we can't take advantage of, which I think is unfair. But so things like that might deter other FS from considering the regional offices, especially where, you know, this is your life. You're constantly, you know, you might buy property, you might choose to keep it. It happens to not be in the NCR, and then you can't take advantage of the FSD. When the cost of living is so high, or much higher in, let's say, Toronto than it is in Ottawa, you need to make choices that make sense for you, and they're not supported by FSD. So I know there's no easy answer, but just flagging that might deter people in the future from going to the regional offices more. Yeah, I'll, you know, I have an officer who covers, he does life sciences and agriculture and agri-food. So, you know, and we have this conversation about specifically Indigenous exporters on the agri side. And, you know, we came to the conclusion that we're just going to leave it for now. We wanted to do more, but just the potential of, you know, the sort of smaller number of companies being ready to export, and, you know, the Swiss market is a bit particular, I guess, in some respects. But we decided to just leave it for now. But you know, what really helps us is just reading from others how their missions went. So I'm into getting copied on a lot of reports, and I delete the ones that I don't care about. And Karen, if you send out yours, send it to Star STC maybe. It does help to generate ideas and to get best practices from others, and just get the thought process rolling.
Okay, Pam, I saw your hand up, and then Cael, and then we're going to let people go and enjoy their evening/day.
Sorry, I just wanted, just in hot pursuit response to Nadja, we are aware of those issues with relocation and so on for the regional offices, and we are going to try to get them addressed in the next round of the FSD negotiations. And so there'll be a survey coming out from us fairly soon. We've got a committee, a consultation committee formed, and we're going to develop a survey. Cael is working with us on the consultation committee. And please, you know, keep your eyes out for that, and please, you know, give us your feedback in as much detail as you are, you know, willing to share, because that will help strengthen the thing. But that we are aware of for sure. So thanks.
Cael, you want to have your last kick at the can?
Sure. I'll respond to Karen first. Thank you for the kind words. And yeah, San Diego has been a fantastic post to work with. And amusingly enough, I have a big long email with a new proposal for you coming your way this afternoon. So we'll follow up online on that. But in response to your question about, do RO trade commissioners send out messages, you know, bi-weekly, monthly, that sort of thing? We had a big roundtable on this to compare best practices internally. Okay, how often do you send them? What's in it? What's the format? What goes on? And I would say it depends on the officer, but it's usually I would say between every 3 to 6 weeks for an officer. And if there's something big or important that's coming out, normally that's enough to accelerate it. My last role in headquarters was in the Canadian Technology Accelerators program. And one of the things that, you know, my secret RO mole hat when I was there was moving the deadlines for the CTAs so that they're all standardized. So that when the RO officers are sending out, they didn't have to do a new CTA every week. They're going to do one, and it's going to be such and such date. So things that you can do to get those in early will definitely help. And you may not get one may not get as good a service reaching out to clients if it's going to be something with a deadline within a couple days, than if it's a nice long lead time of a month or so. That being said, you know, flip side of the coin, hey, company X is coming to your market in 3 days, can you meet with them? Is something that we're definitely guilty of at the ROs as well too. So it is a two-way street. And then in response to Pam's question about what PAFSO can do for the ROs, I think that that Nadja has certainly touched upon the relocation issues and the FSDs and others. It really isn't a system that's built for the ROs, and I think it probably will be worth taking a look at the FSDs and other NJC documents to make sure that there aren't that many of us, but we care about this a lot. But I would say what the ROs could potentially do for PAFSO, in the spirit of what William's putting together. A lot of us are in the regions with regular contacts with universities, whether it's universities that we've attended or that we're visiting for outreach or that we're assisting ministers and others. I think that there could be a good opportunity for us to go out with our PAFSO hats on, not necessarily representing the department or the TCS, and speak to potential recruits who might be interested in a career in the Foreign Service, to give them the straight goods and also serve as a de facto recruitment mechanism to ensure that we have representation from across the country. And I think it would be kind of an interesting project for, I don't know, maybe if the Secretariat gets a MITAX funded student position or something at some point, to come up with a variant of the PAFSO 101 deck that's aims at new students to help us as the union, as the advocacy for the FS, to go out and start engaging in a way that the department doesn't necessarily. So I think that there's a space that we can own there, and I would be delighted to hit up the universities on Vancouver Island, and I'm sure my colleagues in Vancouver and across the country would probably be perfectly happy to go on and chat with some keen young undergraduates or graduate students. So at your service.
Sounds great. I think we're going to wrap it up, and I want to thank everyone for coming. I think for some people, regional offices are this mysterious space, and we're not using them, I'll say, appropriately. We're either just thinking, just quick, recruit me someone, or we forget you exist. And we need to make sure that we're all helping each other, because, as has been said multiple times, we have one objective: to help the client. And if we do our jobs well, and I think there's going to be a session this week or next week about the client. No, that's the employee survey. But I think our client service surveys always show that the trade commissioner service is pretty damn impressive. And that's because everyone is doing their best to make sure the client comes first. So thanks, everyone. And if you have any questions, you guys know where to find me. And this will be up on YouTube in a week or so. Thank you, Marty, for keeping us on track. And everyone have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Merci.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Thank you.